and welcome to Azril Ontology. Today, we'll be covering Frost Deathknight. We have a special guest today. He is a guildie of mine from Penanza on Kazakh EU, and his name is Berri.
Hey man, thanks for having me on the show.
Me and Berri, we're going to be talking about Frost Deathknights. As you can see, these are the talents we've taken. We've gone with Icy talents, Runic Continuation, Ice Cap, these two don't matter, Frozen Pulse, and Obliteration. And this is what we're going to be using for the test. Over to you, Berri.
Alright, so the single target rotations we'll be handling here. On Alpha, actually, there's a lot of resemblance to the way you might play Frost if you were playing two-hand Frost on Live, which means that a large amount of your damage is being dealt with Obliterate, actually, as opposed to Frost Strike and Howling Blast. Howling Blast now is really, it used to be your main damage dealer for one-hand Frost on Live. It's really now hitting not very hard at all, and you'll really only use it for Rhyme. Obviously there's some talents to increase its damage, but we'll discuss that later. So the rotation, I mean, there's a few caveats. Obviously you hit Pillar of Frost on cooldown. You want to keep up Remorseless Winter as much as possible, at least that's what we're thinking, based on some of the talents on the artifact. There's a new opening ability, Cinder Ghost's Fury. We'll go into that a little bit later. But basically it's just a nice little burst on pull there. And then, of course, you want to dump your Runic Power with Frost Strike. You only have one rune choice now, which is the Runic Empowerment, and it actually feels quite good on Alpha, that one. And then we have Obliteration, which is basically a very strong single-target burst option you have there, which reduces your Obliterate to cost only one rune and gives you a stack of Killing Machine. So very nice potential for burst there. And then just a final closing note to the rotation. Just good to know that the artifact will summon little spirits of past Lich Kings, and they give you an empowerment. And just to dispel any illusions what that empowerment is, it basically is just a set amount of strength. I actually haven't tested if it skills with your level, but I assume it will. So yeah, it's just basically Frost version of Fallen Crusader on Alpha, since you don't get the actual enchant anymore. So over to Azril again.
Alright, so that was pretty much the gameplay. We'll go over some of the talents and have a bit of a discussion about the issues with Frost DK and some things we feel like need to change and some contradictions and discrepancies that we've actually found. We got the 56 roll. As you can see, you got between Shattering Strikes, critical strike damage on your Frost Strike, 25% attack speed on Frost Strike, and Freezing Fog. Now, me and Berri will be talking about the discrepancy between Frost damage and physical damage. As you know, Obliterate is physical damage, and most of your damage is auto attacks and Obliterate. But your mastery is increased Frost damage, which only seems to be Frost Fever and proc damage. What do you think about that, Berri?
Yeah, it's a bit of a weird design. I feel like they're trying to switch. They're trying to encourage you stacking mastery, and then at the same time with some of these talents like Shattering Strikes, which increase the damage of your critical strike by 30% for Frost Strike. I feel like they're trying to create more synergy between mastery and crit as well. So that the question is whether or not they're succeeding with the current talent choices. But it is a weird design where the Frost Deathknight's mastery is not affecting what they seem to think is going to be its largest source of damage, at least in opening raids with opening mastery values, I think. So, yeah, bit questionable.
Then we have the 57 roll. As you can see, we took Runic Continuation due to its overpowered nature. It just gives so much value over Killing Machine energizing a rune on a low chance, and obviously Horn of Winter to give you that on-demand rune and runic power on the cooldown.
Yeah, it's clear that Horn of Winter is completely useless, really. Outside of maybe very niche AoE situations where you suddenly feel like you need an extra rune. I suppose Murderous Efficiency could increase the value of haste, actually, so it might be nice for that, but I think you need very high haste levels to get enough Killing Machine procs to make that worth it. And then, of course, it'll also be the question whether actually consuming those Killing Machine procs at that level of haste will be the best source of damage necessarily. So
Then we got the 58 row. We went with Ice Cap. Even though in the past I preferred Hungering Rune Weapon, but recently Hungering Rune Weapon has been receiving nerfs, how much runic power it gives over time, and even how often it gives you runic power. And then you have Avalanche, which it kind of seems like it's an AoE talent, but at the same time it buffs Pillar of Frost, and surely crits on Pillar of Frost is going to be better than Avalanche.
Much better. Yeah, I really don't see Avalanche having any rating utility or place. I mean, Ice Cap is just clearly a lot better, especially with Killing Machine, and again, it's kind of incentivizing you having more crit, so that's increasing the value of crit for the spec, which has really historically been a problem for Frost. So that's a great talent in my opinion. Then Hungering Rune Weapon, I mean, I think it's intended to be used with Breath of Cindergrosa, but the current state of it's not really giving that much runic power or that many runes, so it's not having that much of an effect on Breath, so also slightly disappointing in its current iteration, but it's an interesting idea for Breath gameplay at least.
Then we have 60 and 75 rows. Obviously the 60 row is utility like stun, slows, disorient, so we didn't really bother with this one right now. 75 row, we are both agreeing that Prophetic Magic will pretty much be your go-to choice in raiding due to it being used both defensively and offensively.
It's basically everything you love about Anti-Magic Shell with a little bit of extra, so I mean, there's no downside to that obviously.
We also feel like implaceable on a fight where you're just not going to get that magic damage, scumbag damage. It's going to go implaceable for that additional reduction and cooldown reduction on your defensive cooldown. And Permafrost, it doesn't really... It can have a place in raiding, but at the same time, if there is incoming magic damage, you're going to want Prophetic Magic, and Absorption Shield from the damage you deal with auto attacks surely won't be enough for a raiding encounter.
No, I mean you could maybe see it being good on a fight where there's constant pulsating physical damage or something like that, where it's not large spikes, because then you'll want to use Implaceable, or where there's large magic mechanics, you'll want to use AMS obviously. So I mean, it might be good on some fights, but absolutely Prophetic Magic will be the go-to choice.
No, actually, now I think about it, what if there's like a fight where you take like, the target takes a fuck ton of damage, like you go like crazy numbers, and the auto attack could actually give you a sick shield.
It could, yeah. It's kind of like an interesting, almost seems like leech, you know, like on Gorfiend, you'd suddenly have a big shield for that phase there. So I mean, it might be interesting, but you'd have to play around with it actually on actual raiding counters just see if it feels right, you know.
So the 90 row, you got Frost Scythe, Frozen Pulse, and Gathering Storm. Currently, these rows all do the same thing. Gathering Storm, we feel like Remorseless Winter will be played in single. So is Gathering Storm that single choice? So then what is Frozen Pulse? And then what is Frozen Scythe? And Frozen Scythe itself, it has a weird design. And we kind of feel like we're not sure where they want to go with both of these talents. Frozen Scythe does work in terms of design, it's just the numbers are a bit low. And then if it obviously gets too high, then it starts replacing Obliterate on single, because this scales with Mastery and Obliterate doesn't.
And it works with Killing Machine, so it actually competes directly with Obliterate for that part of your damage, in some cases.
But then you have Frozen Pulse, which is okay, like it's not even guaranteed, it's just that your frozen damage is coming from your auto attacks. It's just like,
yes, constant small stream of damage.
Well,
I mean,
what's the point of this?
It's really a weird talent, Frozen Pulse. I think it's just the one, if you don't want to think about it or don't feel like keeping up Unending Winter or Remorseless Winter even, then you'll go for Frozen Pulse. Because obviously in a raiding environment where you want to be able to control when you do big AoE, then Frozen Pulse is completely useless really. Then Gathering Storm, I mean, obviously it's going to depend on how they actually tune that ability. I mean, if it stays in its current form, it's hard to imagine using a single target. but there's some things in the artifact that increases damage, and there's the Frozen Soul ability where you blow up at the end of it, so then they might be incentivizing it, so then it could be your go-to choice for AoE if you feel like managing the rune enough to actually keep it up, because it does cost a rune as well. And then Frost, like, I mean, I think that's the one that has the most kind of smart play value, in that you could save a Killing Machine proc, and for example, if it was like Manroth or something, a lot of imps just spawned and you had a Killing Machine proc, you saved a Killing Machine proc, you hit Frost Scythe. Well, that's a really nice kind of AoE burst that you can kind of use on demand there. So it's really interesting, because in that position, then obviously Gathering Storm or Remorseless Winter, even, it wouldn't do that much damage to the imps, you know. So if you're trying to burst on priority targets, it'll be good. And then obviously with more mastery, Frost Scythe also may become your go-to ability for single target or two target cleave or whatnot. It's really hard to say at this point with the tuning, but it has that potential to kind of, you know, to become an interesting ability. We'll see.
100 roll. We've gone with Obliteration due to it just being too good single. Breath is a shadow of its previous self, and Glacial Advance just doesn't do that much damage, and it has like no mechanic to it whatsoever. It can't even hit the same target more than once.
Yeah, it's a bit disappointing, the Glacial Advance. I mean, I think they have an interesting idea with it. It's kind of an AoE skill shot, but currently it's not really fun to play with or interesting to use, really. Plus it costs a rune, so again, I mean, it has to compete with Obliterate. If it were to be used in single target, it would have to compete with Obliterate. And obviously if you have Obliteration, there's just no way it's going to do that. So, and then you also add the fact that Obliteration is only a 1.5 minute cooldown, and it just has so much potential for priority target burst. So if you like Doomfire and Archimond or something, you could really bring something to your raid by having Obliteration. I don't see Glacial Advance really bringing anything to your raid in that way. So, I mean, right now it seems like a no-brainer. Maybe if they buff Glacial Advance, it'll be good, but it'll also have to be buffed in a way that it doesn't actually completely outperform Obliterate, because then you'll never use any of the other talents. So it feels like a weird time to put on that tier, but you know.
Do you know what issue I actually have with Obliterate is it actually hits 2 times, both main hand and offhand.
Yeah,
and
the offhand does less damage though.
Yeah.
But yeah.
But the Frost Scythe actually wouldn't actually be cool if that also hit with the offhand. But then again, that comes down to it would overperform Obliterate.
Yeah, then it would just overperform Obliterate
and
on a single target.
Control that whole talent row as well. It can completely make Gathering Storm useless. Frozen Pulse itself is useless.
Yeah, that's the thing.
Numbers.
Yeah.
A lot of these talents just contradict each other, and especially with your playstyle. Like,
yeah.
You kind of need to decide what direction Frost DKs are. Are they Frost damage or Obliterate? Physical damage. Like, where are we going right now? Because right now we're like on the fence.
Yeah, kind of all over the place really with those sources, and then with the mastery being increased frost damage, it kind of sends a really mixed signal, you know.
And then it's like if you look at the artifact tree, and straight away you got talents that increase your Howling Blast damage, and then you have talents that increase your Remorseless Winter damage. But then straight away you're going down and down into the tree, and you're just buffing your Obliterate damage by significant amounts. Like
yeah, so I mean, basically they're buffing all your abilities in the same to the same amount. So like, you don't understand what the point is. Like, you're still not going to use Howling Blast differently because of the artifact perk or anything, you know. I mean, obviously we appreciate having some kind of damage increase from the artifact, but just seems like they could have incentivized different types of gameplay through it than just spam Obliterate. I mean, do keep in mind it's alpha also, so we actually don't know what the Runeforge is. If you look at the artifact, there's a talent that increases. It says increase the effect of your Razorized Runeforge by 50%. Obviously, at this point, we don't even really know what the Razorized Runeforge is going to do. Now, it could be that that's an interesting debuff that, with 3 points in it, you suddenly start preferring, you know, Frost Scythe single target as well. That kind of thing, it has some interesting potential there. But yeah, unfortunately, since it's alpha, we actually can't show your viewers that at this time.
Well, this was pretty much Frost DK's and all we really had to say about them. If you enjoyed having this kind of format where I bring on a collab, a guest star, someone who obviously mains Deathknight, he's been a Deathknight for his whole time in Bonanza, he is a main raider in Bonanza. If you like this kind of format, say in the comment section below. I'd like to thank Berri for being on the show.
Yeah, great discussion, man. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Berri. And if you enjoyed the video, give it a like. If you have any suggestions or feedback, please do comment. And have a nice day. Azril out.
Laters.